All right, welcome. Hello, this is John Mattox, and welcome to the webinar on broken fundamentals, why L&D struggles to show value. So I'm John Mattox. I'm the VP of People Analytics with Action Learning Associates, and this webinar is going to cover lots of fundamentals around organizational design and design principles that contribute to effective L&D programs, effective L&D organizations. And then we're also going to take a look at why L&D struggles to show the value and how it connects to these fundamentals and which ones are broken. And we're not just going to talk about what's broken, but also what is working and what you can do to improve those. So first of all, expectations for L&D are high. Learners are expecting L&D to provide relevant learning, just-in-time learning, learning that aligns to their needs, whether it's virtual or instructor-led or virtual instructor-led, or just an e-learning, a bit or a piece of information they need. They also want learning to happen in the flow of work. Those are big changes that have been happening over the past 5 to 10 years. L&D leaders have high expectations of themselves and their groups, and those leaders are expecting the L&D teams to develop relevant content that's delivered in the right way in a cost-effective way. And then business leaders are stakeholders here as well, and their expectations are high because they invest often millions, tens of millions of dollars into L&D so that L&D can upskill or reskill the population of learners or employees so that they can continue to do the good work or achieve the mission of the business. Now, what are the fundamentals and what is broken? So organizational design focuses on fundamental issues that make organizations successful. Now, as we go through this, think about your organization and is it successful, and compare it to the results that are here. So when we ask questions in the survey research that we did, we asked things like, well, what's the purpose of the L&D group? What are the goals? What's the team structure and staffing structure? Everything that's listed here as a bullet point, we asked at least one question about. Now, we don't have time to cover all of that today. So the things that are highlighted here in bold are the things that we're going to cover about organizational design issues that lead to success, and also what you can do with your organization to help improve them. So let's jump into this. Let's start with the demographics. So with regard to our survey, 71% of the respondents came from large organizations, meaning organizations with 5,001 employees or more. In terms of L&D's influence across the organization, 79% said we have influence across the entire company. Another 7% said that we have influence across multiple business units, and only 14% said one business unit. So lots of good reach across the organization here. And then lastly, in terms of industry, there were 3 industries that were well represented here: financial services, healthcare, and technology. Now, among the 22 possible industries, we had 10 represented. Now, we always want more data to come in, and we'll keep the survey open. So if you feel like your organization or your industry isn't represented here, we can provide a link to that as well so that you can continue to fill out the survey, add data to this, and this report will grow. And if you do, thank you. Thanks for your responses. So one of the first questions we asked was, what was the purpose of L&D, or what is your current purpose for L&D? And it was an open-ended question. So here's a simple example. Our purpose is to provide L&D solutions across the enterprise, primarily via online learning and leadership development. We drive vendor optimization to secure the best ROI for our company. It's a great quote. It's a good description of what they do. Now think about all the responses that we got, and then how do we make sense of those responses? So what we did, we looked for common phrases. And those common phrases are shown here on the left-hand side. And not surprisingly, provide training and development solutions came out as the #1 common phrase, most often stated, followed by leadership development. The third most common phrase was achieve business goals. Now, while this is the third highest, it's shockingly low to me. And I hope it's shockingly low to you as well, because L&D is not in business for L&D's sake, for the most part. L&D is there to help the business achieve business goals. And it's surprising to me that this theme or this comment was so low among the responses. Maybe it was an artifact of the way the question was asked. So if we had provided a pick list of the things on the left-hand side, maybe everyone who had seen the pick list would have selected achieve business goals. But it's not the case. So if anything, this should be a red flag. Are you an L&D shop that's in business for L&D, or are you really trying to help achieve business goals by providing performance improvement solutions? Now, with regard to goals, leadership development was the most often stated. Enhance the learning tech ecosystem was stated by just a little over a quarter of respondents. And this is essential because if you're working with L&D in large organizations, you know that you can't deliver learning solutions at scale without an ecosystem of different technologies. Sales and revenue, the third thing here on the list, not surprising that it's at least at a quarter of respondents because sales and revenue are the lifeblood of the organization. Now, I've highlighted transform classroom to digital because this seems low to me. At 22%, I'm surprised it's not closer to 50 or even 60 or 70%, because these data were collected in March, April, and May of 2020, right in the middle of the lockdown in the US due to COVID-19. So you would think during that same period, there was a large transition from instructor-led classroom to e-learning or virtual instructor-led classrooms. So I'm surprised that this isn't higher. Now, I have had conversations with other people about this, sharing these results and these data. And several people have said, well, you know, because our organizations are large, we've already transformed a lot of our classroom materials to digital. So this happened before COVID. So there hasn't been this mad rush, at least within our organization, to make that transformation. Okay, let's keep going. Now here's some good news. How do you align L&D products to business needs? So if you look at the things on the left-hand side here, there are 9 actions. Things like include subject matter experts in the development process and meet regularly with business stakeholders about their needs. So what we're seeing here is that 7 of these 9 actions are performed by 61% or more of the organizations who responded. To me, this is a great sign. This is a check that L&D is doing more than what is minimally required to ensure that L&D products align to business needs. This is fantastic. L&D is not taking a one and done approach or a one silver bullet will solve our problem. They're using multiple methods, multiple approaches to ensure alignment. Now remember, this slide is the epitome of what's being done well within L&D, because later on we're going to see some things that are not being done well, and we'll have to look for solutions. Now let's talk about skills. We asked 2 questions here. The first was, what are your surplus skills within your L&D groups? And the reason we were asking about skills is because if L&D is going to serve the needs of the business, it has to have the skills, the people, the capabilities, the tools in order to do that. So let's see if the skills are actually present. And I asked, well, where's the surplus? And the surplus comes in terms of delivery expertise, content development, program design, and live in-person instructors. Now, given the COVID situation, not too surprised about live in-person instructors for the classroom. And hopefully those instructors are being shifted and transformed to virtual instructor classrooms. However, the first 3 on top, delivery expertise, content development, and program design, those are the fundamentals of L&D. And what it looks like is that L&D is overstocked on these skills right now. So they're not lean. I'm not suggesting that they trim the fat, but they're certainly prepared to do more work than what is necessary at this point. Now let's flip the question. Rather than just looking at the bottom and saying the things at the bottom like measurement expertise, job task analysis, or virtual instructors are missing, we actually ask the question, what skills are missing in your L&D groups? And this is what it shows like. Measurement expertise, without a doubt, by more than half of the respondents, measurement expertise is the thing that's missing most. Now, business acumen is also missing, and that's a common phrase or a common term that I've heard for almost decades now about it's being missing within L&D. To me, content curation is new, though, because what we're seeing with programs like Leade or learning experience platforms, they're trying to coordinate content so it makes it easier for learners to get the information they need faster. So it's nice to see that this issue or this topic is near the top. It's stated as a need. Okay, let's keep moving here. Now, importantly, when it comes to evaluation and analyzing evaluation results, we ask how these organizations do it. Now, most often, 2/3 of the time, measurement teams within L&D are hired to do this. So they're in-house resources within L&D that evaluate training. About half the time, L&D groups are leveraging a learning management system or something similar. And then 44% of the time, almost half, a vendor provides specialized software. Now, unfortunately, 4% of the respondents said, well, we do not collect evaluation information. To me, that's almost like the blind leading the blind, and it's an area where L&D has to improve if they're going to become a meaningful and valued resource for the business. You have to know what you're doing and how well you're doing it in order to tell business leaders how effective you are. And then lastly here, analysis is outsourced to a consultancy. I'm a little disappointed here that outsourced analysis is not happening. It could be that the effort is so big for these large organizations, though, that you need to have a measurement team internally, or you have to rely on systems to do this right. But to me, this is also an opportunity, considering we saw just a moment ago that measurement expertise is missing the most, that there's a real opportunity here to bring in expert outside resources from consultancies to help out. Now, what do L&D groups actually report to their leaders? We have a lot of metrics shown here on the left-hand side. Take a second to read through those, and you might realize pretty quickly that the least valuable information is reported most often, and the most valuable information is reported least often. So looking at this, learner satisfaction with training is reported by 78% of respondents. But we know that learner satisfaction is not predictive of application and performance improvement and business improvement. So it's a relatively useless metric. Now, the number of courses completed only shows the activity of what's happening. It doesn't show the quality, certainly doesn't show whether those learning activities are actually leading to job performance or achievement of business goals. Better indicators are down here at the bottom, things like scrap learning. A scrap is the inverse, or actually, it's closely related to application. So if you say, I'm going to apply 40% of this learning on the job, scrap's going to be 60. If you say you're going to apply 60%, scrap will be 40. So it's an indicator of whether training is relevant and is applicable. ROI is valued because it shows some level of, if a dollar is invested, what are we getting back in return? And then more simply, what about behavior change and estimates of, will training actually improve my performance? These metrics at the bottom tend to be more valuable and insightful about quality and value and connectivity back to the business. Now, this slide is set up based on some recommendations from a group called the Center for Talent Reporting. The data are the same as from the previous slide. The only thing that I've done here is color-coded them and grouped them into 3 categories. And what the Center for Talent Reporting recommends is that you think about your measures in 3 ways. There are efficiency measures like the number of courses completed, the total number of hours completed, courses completed by learning type or learning methodology. So those are the gray. Those are the efficiency measures. And they become efficiency measures as you also add cost data to them. So you can say cost per learning hour or cost per learning methodology, things like that. Effectiveness measures are shown here in green, And they're the ones that give indicators, leading indicators of whether learners will apply what they've learned, also leading indicators of whether it will improve their job performance and possibly how much it will improve. And then lastly, business outcomes, and those are up here in black. What's the impact on a business metric? And what's the ROI? Now, these metrics can be leading indicators showing that are gathered from post-event evaluations and follow-up evaluations or in-person interviews or focus groups. More importantly, if you can get business outcomes data like sales or revenue or customer satisfaction, that's even better, and link whether training is having an influence on those or not. That's the best outcome information you can have. But the point of this slide is to help you frame your metrics around efficiency, effectiveness, and outcomes. And if you want more information about this, you can just go out to the Center for Talent Reporting.org and get more information there. Now, drawing this to a close, we've got a couple more topics. Things about communication and proper communication are essential to showing the value of L&D to business leaders. So the critical question here is, how does L&D communicate value to leaders? When we ask that, we ask it in an open-ended fashion. If you'll think back to the alignment question that we talked about earlier, we saw that 61% of respondents said that they did 7 of the 9 actions to ensure alignment to business needs. Well, no actions here exceed 50%. And in fact, only one action's at 50%, and that's L&D leaders share dashboards. And that's a great thing to do. Dashboards are efficient, they show lots of good information, and they're easy to use in terms of sharing lots of information with leaders in a very succinct way. But some of these other things should be done regularly. Things like program managers send reports, annually review the impact of L&D with leaders. Only a third of organizations actually do this. Meet with leaders to discuss reports and dashboards. That meeting is essential in terms of communicating value. So clearly, L&D has something to improve here if it's going to contribute to its own success and help communicate that success to business leaders. So as a follow-on question, we ask respondents, what should you do more or differently? Specifically with regard to communication. And 36% over here on the right said, well, we just need to be better at communication. Let's create communication plans and be more planful. Let's communicate more often, communicate more consistently, and let's even get support from our corporate communications group. That would be helpful. Now, interestingly, 14% of the respondents said, well, we also need to just align to business goals. Let's make sure that what we have to communicate aligns to the information needs of the business. If we're developing programs, delivering them, and evaluating programs that don't have any meaning to the business, we're off the mark. Why should we even do that? So let's make sure we align first. Now, the heart of this, about what should be done more or differently, revolves around measurement. Half of the respondents said we need to get better at data collection, focusing on value, building data literacy, showing impact, using dashboards. These are all features around measurement that allow L&D to describe what they're doing, describe the quality of what they're doing, and then communicate the impact of what they're doing as well. So if you're not aligned, you're not relevant. If you're not measuring, you don't have a story to tell. If you don't have a story to tell, you really don't have anything to communicate. So in terms of improving the quality of what L&D is doing in terms of showing value to the business, alignment and measurement, not just communication, are essential. Now, here are some basic recommendations. First, alignment. Understand the needs of the business and determine what problems the C-suite needs L&D to solve. and focus on aligning the curriculum to the needs of the business and solve the problems. That's essential. And thankfully, L&D is doing that pretty well to start with. That's one of the first slides we saw, where 61% of respondents and more were doing 7 of the 9 things to ensure alignment. So great there. But what we just saw on the measurement side, we're not measuring the right things in L&D, and we're not communicating the value. So measure what matters to stakeholders. If you need to, hire consultants to fill those measurement skill gaps and or outsource your measurement so you can do these things. Now, finally, communicate, and communicate only the metrics of interest, especially when you're communicating to the C-suite business leaders. They have limited time, limited focus, so you have to be very direct and precise with what you have to communicate to them. Okay. That's the end of the information we had to share today. Just wanted to share one perspective, and that is Action Learning Associates conducted this research. We also support measurement services. So if you need help measuring, if you need help communicating what you've measured into a meaningful story, that's where we can come in and help. And there are 2 different ways: strategic measurement services. So on the strategic side, we help develop sustainable measurement strategies. We can build a measurement team within your L&D group to help you address gaps. We can help build data literacy for L&D and your stakeholders, and also develop measurement champions within L&D to lead the measurement efforts and to reinforce the data literacy. Also, with regard to tactical measurement services, we can help you do things like define KPIs that are meaningful to your leaders, develop tools to gather missing data, help you align measurement practices to TDRP. And that's an acronym that I hadn't mentioned, but TDRP is Talent Development Reporting Principles. And yes, the P is lowercase on that. You can ask Dave Vance or Peggy Parsky about that. I did mention the Center for Talent Reporting, and that's the organization that promotes TDRP. We can also help you apply advanced analytics to uncover insights, and lastly, conduct impact or ROI studies to show value for you. So thank you very much for being here today. If you have any questions, just feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. If not, thank you for your time. Thanks for participating. This is recorded, so we'll get a session up and available to you in a recorded fashion so you can share with your colleagues as well. Thanks again, and have a good day. Looks like there's one question in the chat, and that was thank you. And Clara, thanks for being here. Take care, folks, and have a good day.